Have you ever walked into a room, made eye contact with a man, and sensed something shift? Like you had him completely captivated, but you weren't quite sure why. What if I told you that there are two very specific things you can do effortlessly that short-circuit a man's brain in the best way possible? I'm not talking about looks, charm, or trying to be someone you're not. This goes much deeper than that. Today, I'm revealing the psychology-backed behaviors that make a man mentally lock onto you, where you're not just another pretty face, but the woman he replays in his mind even when you're not around. And no, this isn't about manipulation, games, or pretending. This is about activating a natural feminine frequency that most women never tap into, and that most men are desperately craving but can't put into words. Men aren't complicated, they're conditioned. And once you understand the emotional blueprint they're working with, you stop chasing validation and start triggering devotion. So if you've ever felt like you're doing everything right and still not getting the connection or attention you deserve, this video is going to flip the script. Because once you understand these two moves, simple, subtle, and completely magnetic, you won't have to wonder if he's thinking about you. You'll know he is. Let's get into it. One of the biggest reasons women struggle in dating, especially with high-quality, emotionally unavailable, or seemingly hot and cold men, is because of a myth that's been repeated so often. It's become dangerous. And that myth is this: if you want to attract a man, you have to impress him. We've been subtly taught that attraction is something you earn by being prettier, smarter, more supportive, more fun, more available, more of whatever it is you think he wants. So we perform, we overgive. We wait too long to reply, or we always reply too fast. We read signals, replay conversations, and try to fine-tune ourselves into the perfect woman for him. But here's the truth: men don't fall in love with women who try to impress them. They fall for women who impact them. And impact doesn't come from performance. It comes from presence. It's who you are when you're not trying to be liked. When you're grounded, clear, and emotionally in tune with yourself. That kind of energy creates a pause in a man's mind. It makes him feel something. And what most women don't realize is that men are starved for women who make them feel something different than what they experience in everyday life. Trying to impress a man actually backfires because it subtly communicates one thing: you're the prize. I hope you pick me. And instantly your power is gone. When a man senses you don't need him to choose you, that you are already chosen by yourself, it confuses his wiring. It short-circuits his logic. He begins chasing connection not because you're perfect, but because you're real. And realness, that's rare. So if you've been exhausting yourself trying to be more, give more, fix more, stop. You don't need to win a man over. You need to wake him up. And that starts by breaking this myth once and for all. Because attraction isn't about effort, it's about alignment. And when you master that, you won't need to chase anything. To truly influence a man on a deep emotional level, you need to understand how his brain actually processes attraction and connection, because it's very different from how most women experience it. Biologically, the male brain is wired for focus, pursuit, and problem solving. Men are trained, both culturally and neurologically, to zero in on what they want and go after it. But here's where it gets interesting. That same wiring can make them mentally compartmentalize emotions and relationships, especially in the early stages of dating. So if you're ever wondering, why did he seem so into me, and then pull away? It's often because something shifted in his mental framework, not necessarily in his feelings. When a man doesn't feel consistently engaged on an emotional level, his attention drops, not because he's heartless, but because his brain is trained to respond to stimulus, novelty, and tension. That's why emotionally impactful women stand out, not because they play games, but because they know how to naturally disrupt the pattern. They create emotional resonance, not just physical or surface-level attraction. Another thing, most men aren't used to being deeply seen. So when a woman shows up with grounded presence, high self-worth, and an energy that doesn't seek validation, it challenges his nervous system in the best way. He becomes curious, intrigued, hooked. So if you want to capture his mind, not just his attention, you don't need to be more of anything. You just need to understand how to trigger the part of his brain that craves depth, but rarely finds it. That's what we're diving into next, starting with the first thing that absolutely melts a man's mind. Let's go. The first thing that completely melts a man's mind isn't something dramatic. It's not about seduction, manipulation, or being over-the-top sexy. In fact, it's so subtle and rare that when a woman embodies it, it's like his brain short-circuits in the best possible way. It's emotional stillness. Now stay with me, because this isn't the same as being passive or quiet. Emotional stillness is a woman's ability to be calm, grounded, and emotionally centered in her own energy, especially when things feel uncertain. Most people, men included, are used to emotional reactivity. We're all surrounded by people who are overstimulated, anxious, overly invested in how they're being perceived. But when a man interacts with a woman who doesn't flinch, doesn't chase, doesn't need immediate validation, someone who can hold space without scrambling for control, something primal happens in his brain. He feels safe, but also intrigued, curious, but slightly off balance. Because emotional stillness signals that you're not operating from fear, and that alone is intoxicating. You're not trying to prove your worth. You're not pushing or pulling. You're just being fully present, self-contained, and tuned in. And here's what's wild. When a woman holds that space, it gives a man the opportunity to feel something he rarely gets to feel in the world. Peace. Not boredom, not emotional distance, but true emotional regulation. And that's something that even powerful, alpha-type men are subconsciously seeking in a partner. Someone who doesn't add chaos, but who brings quiet clarity. Not because she's dull, but because her energy doesn't demand, it invites. Now think about this in dating terms. When you're not texting back instantly with anxiety, when you don't try to fill every silence, when you're not rushing to fix discomfort, when you can sit in your own energy and his, without forcing the moment to be something it's not, he notices. His nervous system takes a breath, his mind slows down, and you become the woman who brings emotional contrast into his life. That contrast is powerful, it's memorable, and more than anything, it's rare. Most women try to create closeness through words, actions, reassurance. But deep down, what most men respond to is your state. When you lead with grounded emotional presence, it signals, I'm not here to perform. I'm here to connect, from a place of wholeness. And that melts his mind. Because you're not just another woman fighting for his attention. You become the emotional sanctuary he didn't even know he needed. We're not done yet, because if emotional stillness is what draws him in, the second thing, that's what makes him stay, mentally, emotionally, and energetically locked in. Let's talk about it. Now that you understand how powerful emotional stillness is, let's take a look under the hood. Because what's really happening in a man's mind when he's around a woman like that? What's being activated? This is where we get into the psychological triggers at play, the hidden wiring that, when subtly activated, makes a man feel not just attraction but emotional pull, a sense that you're not just desirable, you're different. The first major trigger is the contrast effect. The male brain is wired to notice what stands out in an environment. So in a world of noise, attention-seeking, and overexposure, a woman who leads with subtlety, with presence instead of performance, becomes psychologically impossible to ignore. His brain starts comparing you to everything else he's used to, and nothing matches. Second is the curiosity loop. When you don't over-explain yourself, when you don't give away everything up front, emotionally or verbally, a man's brain goes into problem-solving mode. He starts thinking about you after the interaction ends, not because you played hard to get, but because your energy left space for mystery. His mind wants to complete the loop, to figure you out, and that curiosity, it's magnetic. Next is the emotional imprint trigger. People remember how you made them feel, not what you said. When you can hold emotional stillness, when your vibe is calm, warm, and grounded, it actually regulates his nervous system. Whether he realizes it or not, he starts associating you with a sense of internal peace, and the brain craves whatever brings relief from chaos. That's why he starts missing you when you're not around, not because of what you do, but because of how he feels in your presence. Then comes the validation inversion. Most people seek approval, but when a man senses that your approval is not automatically given, that he has to earn your emotional access, it flips a switch in his brain. Suddenly he becomes the one seeking your attention. This isn't manipulation, It's about being energetically sovereign. When your vibe says, I choose who gets access to me, you activate a deep need in him to prove himself worthy. Finally, there's the ego disruptor trigger. When you're not reactive to his status, looks, charm, or success, when those things don't move you, it messes with his ego in a powerful way. It tells him, you can't impress me into caring. You have to connect with me. That's where emotional depth starts, and it's what most women miss. The moment you stop feeding his ego and start engaging his humanity, he starts showing you more of his soul. These psychological triggers aren't tricks. They're truths about how masculine energy responds to feminine presence. And once you understand how to activate them naturally, without games, you become unforgettable. Not because you forced it, but because you awakened something in him he didn't even know he was missing. And now it's time for the second thing that melts a man's mind. Let's go there. Let me tell you a quick story about someone I worked with. We'll call her Leah. Leah is smart, successful, and honestly stunning. But when she came to me, she was confused. She kept attracting men easily, but they never stuck around. Conversations would fizzle, texting would slow down, and eventually they'd ghost or give her the "I'm not ready for anything serious" speech. She thought maybe she was doing something wrong, saying too much, not saying enough, texting back too fast, not fast enough. She was constantly second-guessing herself. One guy in particular, Josh, really got under her skin. They had chemistry, deep conversations, fun banter, even a few vulnerable moments. But then, cold, distant, unavailable, and she spiraled. She kept wondering, what did I do? How can I fix it? So we dug deeper. I asked her to describe how she showed up when she liked someone. Her energy, her mindset. She admitted something important. She said, when I like someone, I feel this need to keep their interest. I feel like I have to keep performing, be witty, be supportive, show them I'm a catch. It's exhausting. Bingo. So I gave her one simple challenge: stop performing. Next time she saw Josh, I told her to stay grounded, to stop trying to be liked, and instead just observe. Be still, be present, be warm, but don't entertain. Let him lead the energy, and don't rush to fill the space. So she did it. They met for coffee. He was talking, kind of rambling, honestly, and she just sat there, not cold, not passive, just anchored. Calm eye contact, soft smile. No need to impress, no effort to rescue awkward moments. And guess what happened? About 20 minutes in, he shifted. His tone softened. He stopped trying to be funny. He got quieter, more curious. He started asking deeper questions. He leaned in. He even said, "You're hard to read," in a good way. By the end of that conversation, he was the one texting her follow-ups. Not flirty nonsense, but things like, "I keep thinking about what you said," or "There's something about your energy that I can't explain." Why? Because she flipped the script. She stopped trying to be chosen and started just being. That day, her energy did more than any clever text or perfect outfit ever could. She created a contrast, disrupted his expectations, and made him feel something different. Grounded, safe, seen. That's the power of emotional stillness and presence in action. And it's not magic. It's not luck. It's alignment. This story isn't rare. It happens every time a woman learns how to embody her worth instead of proving it. And if you think that's powerful, wait until you hear what happens when you layer it with the second thing that drives a man absolutely wild. Let's go there next. If emotional stillness is what draws a man in and makes him pause, then the second thing, the one that truly drives him wild, is something most women avoid, hide, or downplay without even realizing it. It's authentic vulnerability. Not the oversharing, trauma-dumping kind. Not the "I'll tell you everything just so you'll feel close to me" kind. I'm talking about real feminine vulnerability. The kind that quietly says, "I'm not here to compete, perform, or be perfect. I'm here to be fully human." And here's the twist. Men are not only drawn to that energy, they crave it. In a world where so many people wear emotional armor, a woman who's unafraid to feel, who's in touch with her emotions without being ruled by them, becomes a breath of fresh air. She doesn't suppress her softness. She owns it. Now let me be clear. Vulnerability is not weakness. In fact, it takes more strength to say, "Hey, that made me feel a little uneasy," than to pretend you're unaffected. It takes more confidence to say, "That matters to me," than to play it cool. Real feminine vulnerability isn't about collapsing into emotion. It's about being brave enough to reveal your truth, even when there's no guarantee of how it will be received. And when you show up like that, open, soft but emotionally secure, it hits a man differently. Why? Because most men are taught to suppress their own emotional world. So when they meet a woman who's comfortable in hers, it gives them unconscious permission to go deeper into theirs. It opens up a space they didn't even know they wanted to step into. He starts associating you with something bigger than chemistry or compatibility. He starts associating you with emotional freedom. That's what makes it unforgettable. It's in those quiet moments when you drop the mask and say something real, not dramatic, just honest, that his mind locks in, because your vulnerability tells him, "You're safe here. You don't have to perform." And that's magnetic, especially to a man who's used to being seen for what he does, not who he is. So whether it's expressing a need without fear, sharing a fear without apology, or simply allowing a moment to be real instead of polished, your vulnerability becomes a doorway. And through that doorway, he doesn't just see you, he sees himself more clearly. That's what drives a man wild, not in a surface level way, but in a way that rewires how he experiences connection altogether. Because now you're not just someone he desires, you're someone who disarms him, who grounds him, who sees him. And once he's seen like that, good luck getting you out of his head. We've got a few more pieces to put together, especially the things that block this energy completely. Let's get into that next. Now that we've talked about what melts a man's mind, emotional stillness and authentic vulnerability, let's talk about the common mistakes that block those exact things from landing. Because the truth is, many women are unintentionally repelling the kind of connection they crave, even when their heart is in the right place. Let's start with the biggest one, performing instead of being. When you're constantly trying to be impressive, the funniest, the most agreeable, the smartest, the most low maintenance, you're not actually connecting. You're managing perception. And while that might get you short-term attention, it doesn't create long-term emotional imprint. The moment a man senses that you're trying to win him, the dynamic shifts. You become the chaser, and the polarity breaks. The second mistake, over-explaining or oversharing in an attempt to build closeness. Here's the thing, true emotional intimacy doesn't come from telling someone everything about you. It comes from being emotionally present in the moment. When you flood a man with your story too soon, especially without being invited into deeper emotional territory, it can feel overwhelming. Vulnerability is powerful, but only when it's rooted in self-awareness, not anxiety. Third, reacting too quickly to emotional uncertainty. Maybe he pulls back slightly, doesn't text for a day, seems distant. Instantly, your energy shifts. You start overanalyzing, sending longer messages, seeking clarity. The mistake here isn't wanting clarity, it's chasing it. That emotional chasing energy, even if subtle, communicates one thing: my peace depends on your consistency. And that pushes a man away, fast. Emotional stillness means holding your center even when things feel uncertain. Fourth mistake, minimizing your needs to appear cool. So many women are afraid to express what they want, whether that's exclusivity, more effort, or deeper emotional presence, because they fear being too much. But when you shrink your needs to avoid rocking the boat, you lose emotional honesty. And here's what happens: resentment builds, energy gets heavy, and the connection dies a slow, quiet death. Real connection requires truth, not pressure, not demand, just truth. And finally, perhaps the most common mistake of all, not knowing your own value. When you don't know what you bring to the table, emotionally, spiritually, energetically, you'll always try to prove it. And when you're in proof mode, you disconnect from your natural magnetism. The kind of energy that actually makes a man lean in is the energy of a woman who knows who she is, even if he never fully understands it. So if you recognize any of these patterns, no shame. Awareness is everything. This isn't about being perfect, it's about being aligned. And when you let go of these blocks, your natural magnetism, the real you, finally gets to come through. Let's wrap this up with a few final words and a bonus insight I didn't mention earlier, and trust me, you'll want to hear it. We've covered a lot today. Emotional stillness, authentic vulnerability, and the psychological triggers that make a man not just attracted to you, but emotionally imprinted by you. And if you're still here watching, it means a part of you already knows. This isn't just about men, it's about you coming back home to yourself. Because what truly melts a man's mind is not a technique, a perfectly crafted text, or some manipulative trick. It's your energy when you're rooted in who you are, no longer bending, performing, or outsourcing your worth to how a man responds. So if you take nothing else from this video, let it be this. You don't attract love by trying to become someone else. You attract love by becoming more of yourself. That's the paradox. The more grounded, emotionally honest, and self-possessed you become, the more men respond to you, without even understanding why. Now, as promised, here's your bonus insight. Something I didn't mention earlier, but it's one of the most powerful shifts you can make. It's not about getting him to choose you. It's about deciding if you actually want him once you're no longer seeking his validation. See, when you stop fixating on whether or not he likes you, and instead ask, how do I feel in his presence? Does my nervous system feel safe or tense? Do I feel seen? Or do I feel like I'm constantly trying to be seen? Everything changes. That switch in focus, from does he like me, to do I feel good being me around him, is what separates women who chase from women who are chosen. Because here's the thing, you're not trying to trick a man into loving you. You're simply learning how to stop blocking the kind of love that already wants to find you. The kind that's calm, clear, consistent, and real. And men, the ones who are emotionally available, self-aware, and seeking real connection, they're not looking for a woman who's perfect. They're looking for a woman who's present, a woman who owns her truth without apology, who expresses herself without fear, who loves herself enough to walk away from anything that doesn't meet her there. That's who you're becoming. Or maybe, that's who you've always been, underneath the noise. So if this resonated with you, don't just watch this and forget. Watch it again. Take notes, reflect, and most importantly, practice what you felt in your body while watching this. This isn't just advice. This is an invitation to be seen, to be still, to be soft and powerful at the same time. And trust me, once you start showing up like that, he won't know what hit him.